let's go ahead and jump into it. And we're going to look at chapter 8 today, and we may even get into chapter 9. You know, when we start getting into genealogies and things within Genesis, we skip over those, not because they're unimportant, but because there's not a whole lot to say about them unless you're going to focus on a specific person within that genealogy. And sometimes you will do that. I believe there's a prayer called the Prayer of Jabez. I think that focuses on Jabez, who is present in one of the lineages within the Bible. But so those sort of things we will skip over. Once again, if you have any questions, you can hit me up on Facebook and ask me those questions. You can also go to our prayer email, which will be our prayer email probably for about the next month, and then that may be changing, but that is currently F as in Franklin, R as in rough, prayer, frprayer@gmail.com. So let's go ahead and get into the book of Genesis. But before we do that, let's do a quick 30,000 foot review of how we've gotten to where we are now, because we are at the time of the flood. We looked at chapter 1 of Genesis, which of course is the creation account, 6 days of creation, and we see order and structure in creation. We also see that based on the hard definition of what a day is, and a day being that 24-hour period, that there is some question as to whether that our human thinking of a day is what those 7 days represent. Now, chapter 2 is often said to be the second creation account. It really isn't. Most of chapter 2 is an expanding on the 6th day of creation when God created man and woman. The third chapter, of course, is where it all falls apart. That's the fall, in which humanity is, and all of creation is entered into sin. And then we follow Cain after he has killed Abel. We see his lineage. We see a time in which human beings are very close to God. Then we see a time when they fall away from God, and they fall so far away that we have the flood. And of course, Noah is seen as someone who is just in God's sight. And so God saves Noah. The flood takes place, and there's the cleansing of the earth. So let's jump into chapter 8 here. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. And he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So we've had the flood, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Entire area is covered. All life is extinguished except for the life in the ark. And now the ark is afloat, and God is making the waters prepare to recede. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So Noah, it rained for 40 days, so a month. And then for another 2 months, the waters are all over the earth. And then for another month, the waters continue to recede. So you can see this is not a quick overnight thing for Noah and his family to be in this ark with all of these animals. Yes, it only rained for 40 days, but there was the time for the water had to recede from the earth, and that's taken a while. It's still, so Noah is, even though the ark has now come to rest at Ararat, Noah is still in the ark. After 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could find nowhere to perch because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days, so he's waited another week. Again, he sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there was in its beak a freshly plucked olive leaf. So they're starting to look a little bit better now. Got olive leaves here. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again, but this time it did not return to him. And of course, I remember being a little kid and not totally understanding this. Okay, so the moral to this story is to make sure that when you're teaching children, that you teach them in a way that they can understand. I remember being a really young kid and learning this lesson, and even I remember seeing Noah's Ark on television, a big blockbuster movie, and thinking, well, but wasn't the bird not coming back a bad thing? Because again, in my little mind, it didn't occur to me, oh no, the bird doesn't come back because it found a place to make a nest and that's where it stayed. And it just didn't return to Noah. And of course, no one explained that to me. Eventually, I became old enough to understand. But again, the moral of that story is, especially when teaching children, to make sure that we're teaching it in a way that they can understand. And sometimes to give that task to someone who's really better at doing it than you. In my particular case, my wife is much, much, much better than me at teaching things to children on their level. I can do it, but she is so much better than me at teaching the younger children. By the first day of the month of Noah's 601st year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering of the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, and you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." This is very similar to the command that is given to Adam and Eve when he creates them. Remember, this command takes place for them before the fall. Go forth, be fruitful, and multiply on the earth and subdue it. That's right out of chapter 1. But now he's saying we have to do it again because everything has been destroyed. Let the animals out so that they can go and they can multiply and increase on the earth. So Noah came out together with his son and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds. Everything that moves on land came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of the clean animals and the clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. Now again, I am the first to admit that sometimes my sense of humor can be a little bit warped, and sometimes some of the things that I think about can just be different. But I do have to say that it's something in me that just says, You just survived a global flood. So many of the unclean and so many of the clean animals are brought into the ark. You spend all of this time in this ark for it to rest on dry land, and the very first thing that happens to you is you get sacrificed. Something just doesn't sit right there. I mean, yeah, you're almost hoping that you're something like a pig, because pigs are considered unclean animals, and so they don't have to worry about being sacrificed. Of course, we know that's not the case today, because for those of us who love barbecue, the pig is. But I understand it. Maybe many of you are like, Pastor, really, this is where you're going with this. But I just think about that type of thing, that these animals survived a global flood only to be sacrificed as soon as the flood was over. It's like, wow. Verse 21, the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again. Okay. There are covenants upon covenants in the Bible. Covenants are God's promises. God has promised many things, and we're going to get to one of those major covenants in just a moment here. So what does God say? Never again will I curse the ground because of humans. Even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, will never cease. So what we have here is God has now made a promise. And the promise is that the earth, he will never destroy all life again on the earth. Let's go here. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans. Because we mess up. He's not going to curse all of creation because we mess up, even though every inclination of our heart is evil. Okay. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. I will not ever do this again. That is a promise in which God has made. And the only entity in all of creation that has never broken a promise is God. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, will never cease. This earth is God's earth. And he has promised, he has made the promise that he will never destroy it again. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be things that get destroyed. Of course, we have tornadoes, we have hurricanes, we have earthquakes, we have wildfires, we have all of these different things. The promise is that never will the whole earth be destroyed again. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward into chapter 9. So this is going to be a continuation of this. God finishes chapter 8 with the promise, and now he's going to continue. So let's see what he has to say. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. So he said it about the animals, and now he is saying it about Noah and his children. Be fruitful and replenish the earth. Interesting. It's only 8 of them, and 2 of them are really old, in that Noah and his wife are really old. But this is the command. Be fruitful, increase in number, and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will be in all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. Now, again, this is important. This is different from what happens in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, he gave us all plant life. Okay? Go back and read it. If you go back and you read creation, the creation account, it is all seed-bearing plants. So, initially, human beings were vegetarians. And I know the vegetarians and vegans out there, they're going crazy. Finally, somebody to admit it. But that is the fact. Initially, when we were in the Garden of Eden, we were vegetarian. We would have been living off of what was grown on the land, not off of the animal. That doesn't take place until after the fall. You notice there is no killing of animals until after the fall, and we see it with Abel. But now things have changed. Look at what verse 3 says. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, back in chapter 1, just as I have given you the green plants, I give you everything. Okay, so now this is where the vegetarians and vegans say you fall off the rails a little bit, because he's basically saying that it is okay for me to enjoy my barbecue from Jack Stacks as long as I do certain things. And now he does qualify this, and so there is something we are supposed to do here. Now let's see what he says. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. So, the super rare steak? Nope, not supposed to do it. And the fact of the matter is that if God, let's just face it, God knows what he's doing. When you look now, several thousand years later, we understand why God gave some of the prohibitions that he gave. Why was there this prohibition against eating pork? Because the fact of the matter is, based on the parasites and bacteria and things that pork can carry, if it is not cooked properly, that can cause a problem. People back then didn't have the ability to know that. So just don't do it. Don't eat the shellfish. For instance, for those, not to gross you out, but for those of you who like lobsters, lobsters are very closely related to cockroaches, and there was no way of preparing that properly back then, or knowing that you had prepared it properly. And the same thing with the blood. It's undercooked, and if it's undercooked, then there is some danger to it, even to this day. I mean, I don't know if you pay attention to it when you go to restaurants like steakhouses. There's a warning right there on the menu about eating meat rare. So there was just, God does these things and told us these things for a reason. And it was basically for us, for our health. And so, don't eat the blood. Verse 5, and for you, lifeblood, and for you, and for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an account. I will demand an account for every animal, and from each human being, too, I will demand an account for the life of another human being. This is basically going back to thou shalt not kill. Whosoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind. And this is an area that I focus on and I harp on, because I think that one of the things that we as Christians have got to start doing is, when we look at other human beings, see those human beings in the image of God. I mean, if we're Christians now, come on. See those human beings in the image of God. And I think if we truly start to look at people and seeing whether they're believers or not, seeing the image of God in them, it might change our behavior. Can you go around hurting and destroying and damaging things when you look at those people and they're in the image of God? And even God says it here. Humans, we're not to shed other humans' blood. Why? Because they are made in God's image. In the image of God has God made mankind. See your people, see people in the image of God. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, I have established my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, and all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood that destroys the earth. Now, there is an interesting thing about this particular covenant that you're not going to see, for instance, in the Abrahamic covenant or in the covenant that God makes with David. This covenant is not only a covenant, it's not a covenant with an individual, it's not just a covenant with Noah. It's not just a covenant with Noah's children, as other covenants have been. This is not just a covenant with humanity. This covenant that God made, never to destroy the earth again, was made with all living creatures. It wasn't just made for you and I. It was made for all life. He's making this covenant with the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, with all of the creatures that walk on land. God is making this covenant. He's making this promise that never again will we have to do this. We're not going through this again. Now, he knows there's going to be sin. He knows that human beings are going to still have their issues, but he's going to deal with that in a different way, not by destroying the earth. This is the first time that you see God make a covenant in this way. He's made it. He says, I make it with you. I make it with all of your descendants. I make it with every creature that was on that ark. And never again. And once again, God is the only one who has never broken a promise. And so, what does he do to remind us of this covenant? And I love this part. Verse 12. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you, and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures and every kind on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on earth. So we're going to stop right there. We will finish chapter 9, and go into, I believe, next week, chapter 11. Because if I have to go back and check, but I believe chapter 10 is another genealogy. There may be a few things in chapter 10 that we can cover. But we'll finish out this chapter, chapter 9, and possibly go to chapter 11. So what do we see here, though? Let's just quick review and close out. We see God remembers Noah after the flood. We see that Noah is in the ark for quite a long time. But when everyone comes out, there's certain instructions to go, to be fruitful, to multiply, that the animals are now given as food in addition to the plant life, and that God makes a promise not only to human beings, not only to Noah and his family, but to all of creation, that I will never again do this. Never again will the earth be destroyed by flood because of human beings. And he has kept that promise. And of course he will keep it, because he's God and God does not break promises. So it is Friday evening. That means this is the last time that we will get together virtually, unless you come to join me on Sunday, which is a new week anyway. And so Sunday, 10:30 is when we have our worship services online. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can also go to our website and you can join us via Zoom. All of those are options. You can also find us on my personal Facebook page as well. And that's 10:30 on Sunday. And of course, next week we'll start and do it all over again, 7 a.m. and 12 noon, Monday through Friday. We have devotions and 3 Bible study opportunities, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Monday, we're studying Romans. Wednesday, we're studying the Gospel according to Luke. And of course, today, we are studying the book of Genesis. With that, if this is something that benefits you and you think it would benefit others, I ask that you please like this information and share it with others so that the ministry may continue to grow and the Word of God may get to even more people. With that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May heaven continue to smile upon you and grant you peace. That is my prayer for you. God bless you.